Uh, hey, no, Chet Aleph. If one borrowed a cow and borrowed the service of his owner dog, owner with it, owner along with it, or hired its owner along with it, or he borrowed the service of the owner and hired him and afterwards borrowed the cow and he died, he's exempt. As we said in Shmos, if an owner is with him, he need not pay. But if he borrowed the cow and afterwards borrowed the service of the owner or hired him and it died, he is liable. As it is said in Shmos, if its owner is not with him, he shall surely pay. If one borrowed a cow and he either borrowed it for half a day and hired it for half a day, or borrowed it for one day and hired it for the next day, or hired one and borrowed one and he died, the lender claims that the borrowed one died. The borrowed one died, or that it died on the day it was borrowed, or that it died during the hour that it was borrowed, while the other one says that he does not know, he is liable. If the renter claims that the hired one died, or that it died on the day it was hired, or that it died during the hour it was hired, while the other one says that he does not know, he's exempt. If this one claims it was the borrowed one, and this one claims it was the hired one, the renter swears that the hired one died. If this one says that he does not know, and this one says he does not know, they divide. If one borrowed a cow and he sent it to him through his son, through his slave, through his agent, or through his son, slave, or agent of the borrower, and it died, he's exempt. The borrower said to him, "Send it to me through my son, through my slave, through my agent, or through your son, through your slave, or through your agent." And the lender said to him, "I am sending it to you through my son, through my slave, or through my agent, or through your son, through your slave, or through your agent." And the borrower replied, "Send it." And he sent it and it died, he is liable. So at the time he returns it.
Okay. Machlif Parabachamor. So now, remember we learned before that when we were talking about when you have a barter, that as soon as one person takes possession of the one object in the barter, the other object automatically transfers ownership. Okay, do you remember that? We had with money, we said money doesn't affect a kinyan. If you just take the money, the kinyan hasn't happened yet. But if the money's still on the table and the person picks up the object that he's buying, then the money automatically belongs to the seller.
Right.
Okay. But when it comes to a barter, as soon as one person does a kinyan on the let's say two animals, if you do a kinyan on the donkey, like he leads it for out in the Perishos Rabim, then immediately it's the ox is transferred. Okay. Machlif parabachamor. So somebody swaps a cow for a donkey, and that's exactly what happens over here. V'yalda. Okay, and now the cow gives birth. But basically the person, they did the swap, and the guy was leading the donkey, and so the person who wanted the donkey, the owner of the cow, took the donkey and made a kinyan on it, and then they went back to the cow that was in the field somewhere else, and they find it's lying next to a baby cow. And there's a baby cow as you're nursing from it. Oh, okay. So now what's the question? Was the calf born before or after the kinyan was made? Because if it was made, if the cow gave birth while it was pregnant, then the baby belongs to the person who bought it. But if the cow had already given birth, then only the mother is sold, and the baby is a separate entity.
Okay. How do they do that kinyan? I mean, they don't pick up the cow and donkey. How do they
For animals, when you can't do a hagbah, then you do a mashicha. You take them by the strap and lead them for 4 amas in the mashicha.
That's what I remember. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. V'yalda. Also, if somebody sells his slave woman, and then she gives birth. Of course, this is a Shifra Kananis, obviously not a Jewish girl. Okay. Right now, because why can we do this? Why can we say money with a slave girl? Because money is a kinyan with karka and with slaves and shtaros, right? So we only said that metaltalin money is not koneh, but slaves are not considered metaltalin. They're considered.
What was the last one you
said? Metaltalin.
No, after before that, you said something that you said
slaves are not considered metaltalin.
There was something else.
Movable objects.
So there were 3 things you said.
Slaves,
mentioned three things.
right. Land, slaves, and shtaros, deeds.
Okay, I didn't know what
Right.
the
So, for
star.
example, if you're purchasing a shtar of debt, so let's say
Right.
that somebody owns 1,000 shekels of debt and he's given up on collecting it, and somebody says, "I'll buy that off you for 500 shekels." Says, "Okay, that's worth it for me." So he hands over the 500 shekels. Immediately, the shtar becomes his.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Right. So now, if he hands, so the buyer hands over the money for the slave girl, and then they come to her and they find that she's busy nursing a baby. Now we don't know whether she gave birth before or after the kinyan took effect. It says no. This she gave birth before I did the sale, either the cow or the slave girl. Both times his time is that he still owns the offspring. No, she gave birth only after I did the kinyan. So that's the two of them busy arguing, and the Mishnah says yachloko. And when you see a case of a safek, and the Mishnah says yachloku, who do we hear? Do you remember? We said his name yesterday. The guy who always said,
Sumchus.
yes,
Sumchus.
Sumchus is the one who comes and says, oh, it's a safek, therefore we must split it. But that is not the halacha. The halacha is that hamotzi mechavera lavaraya. And since the cow or the slave girl belongs to the seller right up until the moment that you can say that he doesn't, so therefore the offspring also belongs to the seller. Okay. Now there's actually a little bit of a subtlety in here that this must be talking about where where the slave girl or the cow are standing in an area that is not owned by the seller. For example, a Rishus Rabim or a side of Rishus Rabim or something like that. Because if it was in the Rishus of the Baalim, the Rishus of the seller, then even Sumkos would agree that there's no that he doesn't have to that it belongs to the seller, right? But if the and even if well, right? Sumkos would agree that. But according to Chachamim, even if the para was in a Rishus Rabim, still it's in the Rishus of the Mocher, and he has to take and you have to prove that it's left his property. And the lokeach who wants to take this away from the seller, he's got to prove that this happened beforehand.
Okay.
Yeah. Onwards in the Mishnah. Hayulo shnei abadim. He's got two slaves. Echad gadol ve'echad katan. One big, one small. Ken shtei sados, or two fields. Achas gadola ve'achas katana. Okay, and they agreed to sell the field, and they didn't detail things well in the shtar. Halokech omer gadol lakachti. The purchaser said, I bought the big one. The halo omer en yodea, and the seller says, geez, I can't remember. So maybe they did the whole thing verbally.
Right.
Okay. Zacha Bagadol says the Mishnah, he claims the big one because he's got a Bari Vashema. Right? Bari trumps Shema. However, once again, just as we saw in yesterday's Mishnayos, Bari Vashema is not so pashut that if Reuven comes to Shimon and says, you owe me 100 shekels, and Shimon says, geez, I don't remember that, maybe not. That doesn't mean that Shimon's now going to suddenly pay Reuven 100 shekels. It's got to be a situation where Reuben's already admitting to, oh yeah, I did owe you 100 shekels, but I thought I paid you back. And then, so that's when the Bari Vashema takes effect. So similarly over here, the Gemara has to take this into a case where the seller is modib miktsas, where he's saying, yeah, so, I sold you, let's say there were 3 fields or something, and I sold you this one for sure. I'm not sure about that one. Okay, so there, if he's a modib miktsas, then he would have to take a shavua to say, what he's more to. Although actually, now that I think about it, I mean this may be just a little kasha of my own, but I'm just thinking about it now. That if he's more, yes, I sold you a piece of land, but I sold you the small one. I think I sold you the small one. So there he's kind of more to the small one, and he would have to take a shavua to say that he's not chayav to give him the big one. And since he can't take a shavua because he's besapek, then he's going to have to hand over the big one. Just a thought over there. That's not actually brought in the parish over here, but maybe there's somebody else who thinks like that. If the seller says, no, I sold you the small one, and the buyer says, gee, I have no idea, then for sure he can only take the small one, because anyway he's the motzi, so he has to make do with whatever the seller who's got the upper hand, because he owns the land, so he's going to just give him the small one. Now they're both fighting at each other, arguing. The one says for sure it was the small, for sure it was the big. So the Mishnah says that the seller must take a shvua that he sold the small one, because they are claiming definitely I only sold you the small one. He's claiming I sold you the big one. So again, maybe that again is the case, is a motiv mektas.
They both don't know how to divide.
Right. Okay. So this is basically it's. I think it may be saying what you're saying. That the moche, the kone makes a taina that he paid the large amount. Okay, and the moche says no, I only received a small amount. So therefore, the moche is modeh b'mektas. He admits that he received a small amount, not a large amount, and therefore he is chayiv in a shvua of what he has to give him. If they both say I don't know, then again Sumchus pops up and says let them split it. And the halacha is like the chachamim who say no, they don't split it. Hamotzi mechaver alav raya, and the buyer can only take the smaller one.
What would they divide if they're talking about a large person or a large?
They would have to basically split the difference of the money. They would have to say, okay, so they would have to split the difference monetarily wise. So basically, he would take the small piece of land, and the seller would have to refund him half of the difference between the large and the small. Okay. So a guy looks at his olive grove and says they're not producing. I'm going to sell them for wood. Okay, legit. It's not worth keeping them. So he wants to sell. So his buyer comes along and says, yeah, I need the firewood, but the buyer doesn't chop down the trees immediately. He decides he's going to wait a little bit, and the trees produce some olives. So now, what's the situation that we've got over here? Is that the buyer owns the trees, but the seller owns the land. So how do these olives get produced? So first of all, the easy case is asur pachos meravius l'sa'ah. If they made a small amount of olives, less than a revius for a sa'ah of land, okay, so that's considered nishkafelach, and the owner of the land isn't going to care about that number of olives. That's why he sold his trees anyway, because they were producing such a small amount of olives. Who owns the olives? The buyer. However, suddenly, they had a good year, and these trees produced a lot of olives, more than the minimum. He says, "Excuse me, these are my trees. They grew the olives." The owner says, excuse me, they're on my land. Where do you think they get their nourishment from? It's my land that produced these olives. So they're arguing about who owns the olives. And the answer is Yachloku. Is this some or not? So it's not. So it's actually not. It's not. This isn't a case of sumchus because it's not a case. It's not really a suffix because we actually know whose is whose. There's no suffix about the circumstances. Um, this is actually the accepted halacha in a case where we didn't specify when the trees were going to be chopped down. However, the Gemara explains that if he sold the trees on condition that they were going to be chopped down immediately, the seller said, chop them down now, because basically he wants to chop up the roots and replow the field or something like that. Then the owner of the field has got the upper hand because he wanted the trees gone immediately. So then if they produce olives, then the owner of the field is going to own the olives. But if he sold them so that the guy could chop them down whenever he wanted later on, then he's got no taina over the guy if he wants to leave them over there and they produce olives, and then the olives will belong to him. Right? So our mission is talking about a case where it was done. They didn't specify when you wanted them to chop them down. So each one is timing, well, I wanted you to chop them down immediately. And the other one says, no, I wanted to hold on to so we don't know, and therefore they sell the olives and split the difference. And it's a bit you can't say Amosim Chaver Alavaraya because the olives are a completely new thing and we don't know it's not clear who the ownership was in the first place. So this is not just a sumfus thing now. Okay. Shut up, Nahar Zaysav Nasana Nasuf Sedei Chavera. Similar case. A guy owns olive trees and there's a flood and it uproots an olive tree and the tree floats downstream with its earth attached to its roots. This is important because if you remember from Maseches Orla, if it loses the earth around its roots, then if it replants itself, then you got to start the Orla clock ticking again. But if it's got enough earth still on its roots that it could live, then when it replants itself somewhere else, then you don't restart the Orla. Okay, so it comes into a neighboring field and it starts producing olives. Each one has a tiny. These are my trees, and even if they got washed away, they're still my trees. And the guy says, yeah, but they're feeding off my land. So again, yachloku. It's unclear whose the olives are. There's no original balim that we can say and therefore they have to split the olives. Mishna Bab.
That's what I was thinking that if it started budding before he chopped down the trees, but they hadn't made the sale yet, it would still belong to the seller. They made a kinyan, but it's got they made a kinyan and it's budding. You see it budding, so now the olives are growing out.
Maybe you could say that, yeah. If it already had, then you could then the buyer because he bought it with the olives on the tree. Okay, a maskir buys leftovers. So somebody rents a house to his friend. The milsa. Now, if you're now in winter, he cannot evict him between any time from Sukkot to Pesach because during the winter months, the rainy months, it's difficult to find a place to rent. That wasn't the custom of the place to be able to find rental. So therefore, you can't evict somebody when you can't find another place to go. Summer.
Huh? Is this a halacha or is this a halacha that you can't, or is it just?
It's because of the custom. It's because of the custom. Things would change, and you'll see in the city here, it's going to be very different. Okay. During summer, shloshim yom, you can give a 10 and 30 days notice because in summer, not so bad to find another place. Uvakrachim, however, that's talking about outside the big cities. Krachim in the big cities, echad yemosechano ve'echad yemosech yeshamim shneim asar chodesh. You want to evict your tenant, you give him 12 months notice. Okay. Uvachanuyos, and if somebody rents a shop, echad ayaros ve'echad krachim, then it doesn't matter whether you're talking about a city or a small town. Shnei masar chodesh. If somebody's renting a shop, then he's investing in the shop and putting all his things in place. So you can't evict him for 12 months. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel mer chanus shel nachtomim b'shel tzabayim. If a person rented a shop to be a bakery or to be a dyeing shop, there he's really investing a lot in equipment over there. Shalosh shanim. You want to get him out? You got to give him three years notice. So so obviously this is changed from the custom today, because today you've got your contracts. Whatever your contract is what's binding. It seems like the minhag in Israel now is that contracts kind of begin and end in the summer. You rent on a yearly basis, and when it comes up time for renewal, you generally give somebody 30 days notice when it comes before the summer that I want to move into my house now, or I want to find different tenants, or anything like that. You can choose not to renew it, but you have to give I think 30 days before the renewal. Anyway, that's that. We're not gonna be able to do all the chazaras. Let's just do a couple. Bava Metzia, hey Yud.
A person may say to another, weed with me and I will weed with you, or hoe with me and I will hoe with you. And he may not say to him, weed with me and I will hoe with you, or hoe with me and I will weed with you. All the days of the dry season are alike, and all the days of the rainy season are alike. However, he may not say to him, plow with me during the dry season, and I will plow with you during the rainy season. Rabbi Gamil says there is an interest paid in advance and there is interest paid afterwards. How? If he decided to borrow from him and he went to him and said, I am doing so in order that you lend me, this is interest paid in advance. If he borrowed from him and returned the money to him and sent it to him and said, this is because of your money that I was lying idle with me, this is interest paid afterwards. Reb Shimon says there is interest with words. He may not say to him, be informed that so-and-so has come from such and such a place. The following transgress a negative commandment: the lender, the borrower, the guarantor, and the witnesses. Then the sages say, even the scribe. They transgress, you shall not give, and you shall not take from him. You shall not be to him as a creditor, and you shall not impose interest upon him. And before a blind person, you must not place a stumbling block, and you shall fear your God. I am Hashem. If one hires a craftsman and they mislead one another, they have nothing but resentment against one another. If he hired a donkey driver and a wagoner to bring wood for a litter, or flutes for a bride, or a dead person, or laborers to remove his flax from the sleeping water, or anything which may cause a loss, they retracted. In a place where there are no people, he may hire other workers in addition to them, or trick them.
Okay. We're gonna have to stop there because I need to get to shul.
Okay.
Okay.
Great day. I'll see you tomorrow.
Cheers.